So this is the final Friday in the month of April, and on the last Friday of the month, the Wood County Sheriff's Department is our guest here. And today I have with me the Investigative Sergeant Scott Goldberg. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing out on the front line?
We're doing our best. The county's doing such a great job right now, and with fighting the pandemic right now, and citizens are really complying, and we appreciate that.
How has that changed the way I mean, are you wearing gloves and masks, and when and how? And
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'm an investigator, so we've changed our approach. We do a lot more interviews over the phone or using social media devices. Traditionally we like to go out there and shake hands with people and talk, but due to the circumstances, we're using our phones a little more. Not saying we don't go out to scenes and still do our investigations, but we want to keep our distances. We want to keep our department healthy and our families healthy too, just like everybody else.
Yeah, you never know who and what you're going to run into in any given place. And I guess I call this the boogeyman thing. When you have like a military operation, or you have, you're bringing in the MRAP or something, they're there, you're here. The battle lines are drawn. This is just something that could be anywhere at any time, and everybody's just kind of nervous about that.
Yeah, you can't see it. The best thing that we can do is take a safe approach, as simple as, keeping our distance from people, and washing our hands, and washing the things that we touch so often.
Well, commerce still has to be done in some, grocery stores, trucks coming in and out. There's things crossing the county line. There's no imaginary thing here where you can a guard post and say, no, you can't come in unless I take your temperature. But I can imagine at some point that might be a way of life, whether it's for stores or, you're in a situation here where you have a jail, and that's a confined space.
Yeah, absolutely. We're taking extra cautions, and when we do bring people to jail, they get medically cleared before going. Simple as, just like if you go to the doctor's office right now, you get your temperature checked, and we have to ask those people that, we're bringing into the jail, have you felt sick? Are you sick? Those types of questions. And if they are, we have to take extra precautions if they're allowed into the jail.
Do you have another holding place, or?
From my understanding, we can. We've been pretty lucky when we do arrest somebody. If they are sick, we can keep them confined in a separate area, but away from the other inmates, because that would be the biggest fear, is it would spread in the jail, with all those inmates.
Sure, and the confined space wouldn't be difficult to understand how it could spread rather quickly, and there are obligations that you have to the people and their families. We didn't sign up for that. We're incarcerated, but that didn't mean it was going to be a sick sentence here.
Yeah, absolutely. And their safety, people make mistakes, and they, when they're there serving their time, we want them to leave. We want them to move into the public and be a productive person in society, and we don't want to leave them sick.
Talking with the Scott Goldberg, Wood County Sheriff's Department, here on this final Friday in the month of April. If you have any questions this hour, you can call us, 384-2191. We're live on the radio. Otherwise, you're watching us on Marshfield Media Access, either on channel 989 on your Spectrum Digital tier. Throughout the month, we'll be rotating in. So I say that because some of these things we talk about will have already resolved themselves by the time that you watch the program. So we're still early in the process here in the final weekend of April. So with the change of new normal, or whatever you want to say here, and the people who are on what's called the front lines, people who, like yourself, who must intermingle with the public. It's part of the process, and sometimes it's people who aren't always, I would think, maybe I'm drawing generalities here, that all that careful about some things like that.
Yeah, crime still takes place. If take addiction for example, if you have an addiction to opiates or drugs of any sort, you're still having those same cravings, even though we're under a pandemic, and those cravings don't stop, for instance. And there are people that suffer with mental illness, that, that struggle during these times when they're confined at home, that it can't go to counselors, and we are still responding to those type of emergencies also.
Well, two things. In jest, I kind of said, well, they should be easier to find because they're out there when there's less people around, who's doing what. I mean, keeping your eye on less people, it seems like would be easier. But on the other hand, you can't assume that everybody's up to something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's I always say the majority of people are doing the right things. And particularly in our county, everybody's doing such a great job right now. But, always there are people that, go outside the boundaries and they're doing things they shouldn't do. And you're right, there are less people on the roads. There's less people moving around stores and things like that. But, those people are still in their homes, and we're still dealing with, some of the issues that, we deal with in homes, and, family matters and such things like that.
How are you, or what is your policy on enforcing businesses that what is essential and what isn't essential?
Well, first off, majority of the businesses are doing a really good job, and we're working closely with our health department, and obviously it's a fluid situation, and the governor's order has changed a couple times now as it's come down, and for the most part, we ask for compliance first, obviously, and that's our approach, and from my understanding, unless I'm not aware, but I don't believe that we've had any issues beyond that, because our business owners are doing a great job and following the order for the most part.
What did you call that? Soft enforcement?
Soft enforcement right now.
What does that mean to you?
Well, what that means to me is we're looking to comply, and our goal is not to make people's lives harder. Our goal is, and I hate the word essential. When we use the word essential worker, me personally, I can't stand that word, because everybody's essential in this world to me, to say somebody shouldn't go to work, that's difficult. But at the same time, under these circumstances, we have to ask people to, do the right things to keep their families or a high-risk person that they know safe. As simple as my wife is pregnant right now, and she's considered a high-risk person, so I take extra precautions, and don't want people to come to work sick. And if someone's sick, I don't want them to come to a grocery store and give it to me so I can take it home to my pregnant wife.
Are you then asking people to help you, you're asking public to snitch on each other? We're in a tough spot here, and I don't know. Some people look at that as snitch, and other people look at it as compliance.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with the public if they see something that's going on that they have a question about, or whether they think somebody is violating the order, to contact the sheriff's department, and then we take the appropriate steps to make sure that everybody is complying with the order at this time.
It's a little tougher with you got so much territory to cover as opposed to Main Street in Marshfield or Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah, it is, definitely. But overall, we're working with full crews right now. Our patrol deputies are out there seeing things too. And then the citizens always do a good job with calling in and making us aware if they see something is unsafe.
You mentioned opioids and drug people who are addicted, and I thought of that the first thing. I thought, man, this is really going to be difficult here on those people when you're out there and asked to stay at home, and that doesn't work for me, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen any increase, or have you seen any more fluctuation in numbers?
I don't know if I've seen increases in the numbers, but I think that we have continued our enforcement. It's not something we can just ignore because of the pandemic. And when we see, for instance, if we know there is a residence or a house or a person that's coming into the area with a large quantity of drugs, we're gonna take enforcement on that person because we have to keep our community safe.
Well, they're not going to tell you that. They have a magic marker written on the side, drugs, in a paper bag. I mean, how do you?
Well, we use our investigative skills. We work with informants that we work with. We work citizens tips. As simple as we've done cases where we have somebody that says, I've got a high traffic volume coming in and out of a residence, my neighbor next door. I've got between, the daylight hours, every 15 minutes a car comes and stops. They're there for a minute and then they leave again. It might be nothing, but it could be a drug house.
He is the investigative sergeant for Wood County Sheriff's Department, talking with Scott Goldberg here this final Friday of the month of April about how the department is handling the situation as it is here with the world today. Some things go on, other things are at a halt, and the natives are getting restless from time to time here. There will be people who will begin to venture out from time to time that maybe didn't before. As it goes longer and longer, it gets more difficult to quarantine yourself, if you will, onto some, especially agriculture. I mean, there's things got to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's planting season, right? Or we're right there. I gotta believe I did see where a couple fields are getting entered and things are starting to dry up. Hopefully that rain holds off next week so our farmers can get working. The crops still have to go in the fields, and people are going to get more restless, like you said, and right now we're asking people to try to hold tight. That we're going to get over this as a community, as a country, and it is tough. Just because we're in law enforcement, we have the same urges to go places, and a lot of our people have canceled vacations or have had vacations canceled, due to the pandemic. But it's important right now for our individuals that are at high risk that this doesn't spread to our area. And we're doing such a good job because we've only had a few cases within our county, and surrounding us only have a few cases too.
That agricultural work is being done in the field when I came home the other night.
Oh. Yeah, it's starting, no doubt.
Somebody was spreading, emptying their lagoon.
Yeah.
Okay, we're doing business.
Yep.
Here. That must go on. So talking with Wood County Sheriff's Department, Scott Goldberg, investigative sergeant here, sitting here patiently. Who do you have with you today?
Well, I have currently his title is Deputy Aaron Anderson, but shortly he's getting promoted to investigative sergeant, and he'll be working with me on more of the north end of the county. That's where I primarily do the majority of my work, and Aaron's going to be teaming up with me up here on the north end, and I'm so happy to have him. He's a hard worker and very intelligent person, and he's going to do a great job.
Well, welcome aboard. The show here anyway.
Thank you.
How long have you been with the department? Tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah, I was hired in 2008 with the Sheriff's Department. Prior to that, I had briefly worked in Juneau County and then a couple part-time departments. But it's always kind of been my goal and aspiration since I got hired to work the road for a period of time, which I have, and gotten some experience. And then I've always kind of hoped to be able to make it to investigations, and I'm excited for the opportunity. Working the road, you see a lot of cases at the start and you don't see where they end up. And in this new path, I'll be able to hopefully see a lot of those cases come to completion.
Well, you partially answered my question, which is why, what excites you about getting into this portion of it, other than the fact that you don't have to be on the road?
Yeah, yep. Well, there's that, not getting wet and cold out there hopefully as much. But it excites me to, in this job, you never stop learning. I don't care what aspect of it you look at, but there's always new policies, new laws, new case laws. There's so many different aspects, and there's so many different ways to investigate a crime scene, so many different avenues and routes, and I look forward to continuing to learn and improve and try to be the best that I can be to close cases and give closure to victims in cases.
Aaron Anderson is his name, moving into the investigative role here with the Wood County Sheriff's Department on today's Insight program. You mentioned a kind of an interesting aspect, which is you see things at their beginning. I would think in a rural county like this, we do have a couple of cities, but for the most part, there's cows and corn, it's not like Cook County in Chicago,
Yep.
So you have traffic, domestic, and then maybe some theft down the line, of other things that are being reported.
Sure.
Those are the kind of things that you're probably, well, less traffic now once you get off of that part of it, but being on the road, what kind of investigations, or where would you pick up? I mean, what kind of things have you seen that you would follow up on? Theft and domestics, or?
Yep, absolutely. Where there was a burglary that took place, or a theft, or even a sexual assault that was reported. Some of the things that we take as a road deputy, an investigator, if it's a severe crime, especially with any kind of some kind of injury and things like that, a lot of times the investigator will come to that scene then, so they can observe it and use their advanced and different training that you don't get as a patrol deputy necessarily, and use those skills. And we always work together, patrol and investigations, and one can't be without the other. So,
as a patrol deputy, you write the first incident report and take statements and things like that, and then how does that work? Do they hand it off to investigate them? And when do you have to get involved? I mean, is there going to press charges or not? Is that what your general criteria is for investigation?
Traditionally, the road handles a ton of these cases. If they can be solved immediately, and they'll press the charges, they have the same powers and abilities that I do as an investigator. Depending on the scene, depending on what evidence needs to be collected at a scene, they may call us to a scene to help collect that evidence. A lot of us in investigations have had more advanced training in those areas. Also to look at things differently with some of the advanced training we've had. Also, once a case gets to the point where it's going to take several days or weeks or months to investigate, it gets moved on to investigations, or if it moves out of our jurisdiction. So let's say an offender potentially of a burglary lives in Beloit. That's where it would move on to investigations, because we will travel to those locations to track down a potential offender and interview them and arrest them if need be out of the area if that needs to be done.
So you do travel out of jurisdiction in order to follow a lead?
Absolutely, we do. Absolutely.
And is it out of state or just out of community?
I have gone out of state to interview people. Obviously, we look at the type of case, but imagine if just as simple as a burglary, if you had, or a theft, but if you're talking tens of thousands of dollars that are taken off of a property, which we rarely have, we're going to follow up with that. We had an incident that I believe, if I recall, several years back, where a camper was stolen and it was located in Minnesota. So myself and another investigator went to interview a person in Minnesota for that case.
I don't know how to ask this other than to just, how long do you hang with it? I mean, is it dollar amount? Is it personal property? Is it somebody who's staying on you?
No, I stay with a case as long as I can until the leads stop. So we never really close a case, and I shouldn't say it like that, but obviously cases cool off. The evidence quits coming in. You don't have a suspect. I don't close them, because at some point that evidence could, come forward that could lead to an arrest, or the victim getting their property back if it's a property theft, obviously. We don't stop investigating until, obviously, statutes of limitations come upon us, whether it's a misdemeanor or felony, and then obviously with some of our sexual assaults or a death investigation, we will continue to investigate those until no end.
He's Scott Goldberg, Investigative Sergeant with Wood County Sheriff's Department. Also here is Aaron Anderson, soon to be moving into the investigative part of the Wood County Sheriff's Department, talking about the business that they do. You can join us here live on radio, 384-2191. 384-2191, on how the guys here on the boots on the ground here are talking to us about how they do their job, so to speak. And anything that I'm not getting to, you're more than welcome to give us a call here. Luckily, we haven't had in Wood County a need to have you investigate anything. There had been in other states that I've lived in, break-ins, thefts, people cut the lock off my storage area, and the feeling that you have, the violation of that, and then not only that, but the stuff that was one of a kind that they didn't want, You know, they probably trashed it when they got down the road. They weren't looking for something they could turn around either into money, or to you it's got some value. To them, it's just dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of today's burglaries and thefts are drug related in some sense. They're looking to sell that property so they can get money back to buy their source of drugs, and we're seeing that not only in Wood County, but we're seeing that throughout our country. And dealing with victims, luckily my house has never been broken into, but to go to bed that night knowing that somebody was in your home, I can't imagine doing that. And that's part of the reason I have passion. I know Deputy Anderson has that same passion, is because we want people to feel safe, and we can't imagine ourselves going home and having to go to bed knowing that there was some stranger in our house and knows where we sleep at night. And I think giving some people some closure to say, hey, we got this person, we got this guy, this gal that decided to come into your home and take your things, that's very satisfying in my job.
And then the other part is recovery.
Absolutely, getting that property back. I mean, seeing those smiles when you are able to give back a piece of jewelry that's been in the family, or maybe a firearm, or a trailer or a truck that somebody took, that's a great feeling.
Well, it's easier to have a big item like a truck or a trailer, but a cassette tape with Grandpa's voice on it, that's one of a kind again, they'll never get back, is one of those that when it comes to knowing that you can't, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and my eyes are getting moist, and I was like, you didn't get that? It's not here?
Yeah.
I mean, because they probably threw it out the window or in the dumpster when they were, going through what they could get things for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the problem when someone goes into somebody's home and takes like a jewelry box, like you're giving that example, that, grandmother's wedding ring is in there, or necklace, or it just, that sentimental value that goes along with it, and that may not be worth anything dollars and cents wise. So you're right, that's the best part of our job, is when we're able to close these cases and get that property back to people and give some closure to these people that became victims in these cases.
Talking with Scott Goldberg, Aaron Anderson, Wood County Sheriff's Department, this final Friday of the month of April. If you're watching us on Marshfield here, and just letting you know, if you're listening on radio, we're live here. You can call us 384-2191, 384-2191 here on today's program, or 2192 for that matter. We'll also get you through here to me. And what is your relationship like with people who buy merchandise? I mean, we don't have a huge pawn business.
Sure, we have a great relationship with our pawn shops in our area. They are very open to work with us. I personally I've never had an issue. If I go in and ask about an item or a person, they're always forthcoming. They don't want stolen property in their store either. And
how well do they quiz people that come in, though?
Well, for instance, we've gotten information such as this person's pawning way too much of this item, or they, I won't bring up any names of any stores, but there was a store that came forward and said, this seems weird that so many coins are being dropped off by this young gentleman. Like, where did he come up with all these early 1900s or 1870s coins? Like, and I think by doing that, they're trying to help us out. One, help a victim out, because if you're a coin collector, for instance, those coins mean something to somebody, not only financially, but some people take pride in the coins that they have, and the store owners don't want that stolen property, because if we find out it's stolen, we just come take those items and give them back to the victim, and then the store becomes a victim in that case. And so if somebody's stealing, let's just say a $1,000 item, the store just lost $1,000, and that victim will have to, the offender eventually will have to repay that, but that's not coming down not until it's down the road before they get that money back from them.
And the case is settled and adjudicated and everything is what's going to be done about this situation.
Exactly. So people do eventually, if the judge orders that they have to repay the victims, they get their money back. But you can't sometimes, as the saying goes, squeeze blood out of a turnip, right? So it's sometimes that takes some time to get that money back to those victims.
It seems to me, not being thinking along the lines of somebody who has stolen property, wouldn't it be smarter to go outside of the area?
Yeah,
do you find a lot of people in the community here, or that the pawn shops are calling you about people who are coming in?
We use a system that's called Leads Online that allows us to search pawn shops throughout the United States. So if I have a stolen chainsaw, steel chainsaw, I can go ahead and enter that information into that website, and it'll tell me who's pawned off a steel chainsaw and where. And it's interesting because you will see names from our communities pop up in Minnesota or Illinois or vice versa. Like, why is this person from Kansas here pawning, an item here in Marshfield? It's not that often, but we do see that.
Talking with Investigative Sergeant Scott Goldberg here, also soon to be in the investigative department, Aaron Anderson, deputy with Wood County Sheriff's Department, this final Friday of the month of April. You can join in here, 384-2191, 384-2191 here on the Insight program. If you have any questions that you would like to pose to them about their business, you can do so here. We talked about the current situation as it is with pandemic in place in the early part of the program. If you didn't hear that, well, you can jump in and ask as well here. So we'll get back to it in a moment.
Welcome to the Pioneer Agronomy Series. I'm Larry Lee from Brownfield with William Wynn. So as we're looking ahead now, looks like the worst of the weather is behind us. All we have to do is hope that it stays dry enough to get in the fields and not rip them up or get too muddy. What are you looking at as far as other considerations for the farmers that are going out now?
In most cases, Larry, at least down here in the southwest part of the state, if you're in a conventional till system, so you're doing a fair amount of tillage, those seed beds are relatively dried out and they're pretty close to being fit, if not already fit to plant. But in some places where we have quite a bit of no-till, where the soil conditions are more clay-based or heavy clays, those soil conditions aren't quite fit yet. So you got to pick and choose which fields you want to go to first. My biggest thing is if it's not quite fit for corn, I start planting soybeans. Soybeans are a lot more compensatory and they're not as dependent on population for getting that expectation of yield at the end of the season. So you could give up a little bit there and still get some acres covered, and then once it gets fit, go back to corn. Is kind of my strategy for my farmers.
That's William Wynn from Pioneer. I'm Larry Lee from Brownfield.
AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program here for a Friday, the 24th of April, final Friday of the month. Means we have the ability to talk to members of the Wood County Sheriff's Department. And in here this morning is Investigative Sergeant Scott Goldberg, and who's soon to be promoted to the Investigative Department is Aaron Anderson, a deputy with the Wood County Sheriff's Department. So he has a new perspective coming in here, and if you hear that name, you heard it here. I mean, as a person to talk to, if you have a need to do that. I mean, how 911, unless there's something that's an emergency, isn't the way to go to get to you.
Yeah, the best way would be call our department, and then they can transfer them to us. You can call dispatch at our non-emergency number, which is 421-8700, or you can call our front office, which would be 715-421-8715 if you're looking for investigations. And traditionally, I will give out my work cell phone number and my work number once I'm working with somebody. But traditionally, that's the best way to get a hold of us.
And find out if something can be pursued, I guess, or could be, or... Yeah,
I mean, we pursue everything that comes to us. Obviously, some cases are more solvable than others, but we're going to do our best no matter what.
Well, you can get everything from somebody took my lawnmower up to, high dollar amounts or even personal injury that happens in an assault that while somebody's being robbed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in investigations we work, like cases that, like we talked about, that it could be that lawnmower that's taken, that usually patrol might work on that case a little more because it's a lower value item, or we might get that case because the offender lives in a different county or out of our jurisdictional area, or we look for patterns. Yesterday I spoke with Monroe County and Jackson County in reference to an issue that we're having with it seems like a petty theft, maybe a few $100s or $100, but when you add them up, it ends up being thousands of dollars when they're taken from multiple communities.
What about things like bar fight? I mean, there's got to be. Is it
Traditionally,
is it feasible for somebody, if somebody takes a swing at me, that I can press charges?
Well, obviously, without your consent, you could press charges, and ultimately, that's something our patrol traditionally will investigate unless it becomes a very serious crime, meaning substantial battery, and we need to collect evidence or something like that at the scene of the bar.
Yeah, a black eye is one thing. Throw them through the closed door is another. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, we don't have that much.
Not a problem here with everything closed up.
No.
How has your business changed? I mean, in the amount and type of calls that you're getting now with people being cooped up.
Better.
I would say that generally speaking, our call ratio has gone down a bit. I think that our dispatch center is asking a lot of screening questions and things like that, and we haven't been, I guess, having, as Investigator Goldberg mentioned earlier, responding out to a lot of calls. So when they can be handled over the phone, that's what we would prefer. So I would say, personally, I think that the calls have maybe gone down a little bit.
You bring up an interesting point, though, with at the dispatch level and the new, how would I say, a questionnaire that they have. They're asking things like, "Is anybody sick? Has anybody been sick?" Or
Yep, they've got screening questions that they'll run through, and then they will actually inform us prior to our response whether we should be prepared to use our precautions that we've been issued, such as our N95 masks and obviously gloves and protective equipment. We would take a much more drastic approach, I guess you could say, donning full gear, protective equipment in a circumstance where we're notified ahead of time that the person does have symptoms, is symptomatic of COVID. That's generally speaking how we would handle that.
it's not a big a problem in Wood County because you're somewhat familiar with the terrain, but I heard a fire chief say, it would be nice if they could tell us what the situation is. Is it a building? Is it are we going past an apartment where there's a lot of people? Are there, what's the lay of the proverbial land? I mean, when somebody calls you've been on the road long enough to know that if it's on H or C or wherever it is, you got a somewhat of an idea of where that is and what's around it, that you're looking at either a farm or someplace that's a little more isolated than in the cities. So it's not as big of a thing, but I would imagine, something you'd like to know.
Yeah, those are all good questions, and our dispatch center typically does a very good job of screening and asking those kinds of things to best prepare us for our response, and so that we can try to respond as appropriately as is necessary.
Talking with Aaron Anderson, he is going to be moving into the investigative department here of the Wood County Sheriff's Department. Also Scott Goldberg, investigative sergeant with the department as well, about their business and how things have changed here in this pandemic that we are in, whether or not there is, I would think traffic would be down in general, but that thought, the buzz on the news is that maybe domestic abuse, because people are cooped up, and they can't report, and kids, who didn't get food are not, and who may be in a bad situation are now stuck in that situation and can't get away.
That is a fear of mine. One of my biggest fears, and I know Deputy Anderson and I spoke about this a while back, is these children in these situations that, we do get a lot of reports from the schools, and if they are in an abusive situation, that they're unable to make those phone calls. And so if you are aware of something or suspect something, please call. We will go and handle those situations, and we handle them very seriously, because if a child is unable to report abuse or neglect, we want to help, and we have the avenues to do so.
Well, in a rural area, you're away from prying eyes, and people can do things that are less looked upon, if you will, so other people need to tell you about that. But do you ever worry that you roll up in a marked squad and things get bad or worse when you leave?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge fear, and that's why when we've had great training over the years in domestic violence, and to really look into the history of these people that are, rarely do we go to a house that it's a one-time thing. A lot of times we'll go back multiple times in a domestic, when we go to a domestic abuse case. And so traditionally we try to separate those. If someone's not getting arrested, we want to separate those people. Let, cooler minds, right, move forward. So separate them for the day or the night, and that way they can take a better approach when the mind's cooled off.
You'd like to be a fly on the wall when you pull out of the driveway, wouldn't you?
You bet. Sometimes we would be.
Yeah, you'd like to circle around the back of the house and just look in the window and see how this goes after, because the person who's being abused is going to be even more so for bringing on attention to this situation.
And hopefully we're able to intervene. If we're doing a good job investigating, we in most cases we're able to stop that from happening, whether it be an arrest or a separation at the time. If we have any fear of the abuse continuing, we won't leave. We'll figure out another avenue.
I mean, you mentioned your training, but unless there's marks or unless there's something that you can go on, you just have a hunch of a person's demeanor.
Well, that, and then we do. We've been through training for interviewing, and you get really good, and Aaron can contest to this, that we get really good at telling if someone's telling us a lie or not. And it's not hard after we've interviewed people in our careers. You ask a cop, year one, if is this person lying or not, and they'll have a hard time. And then you ask a cop, 10 years into their career, is this person lying or not? And they're pretty accurate if that person's lying or not.
I wouldn't want to be your kid.
Yeah.
And to go a little further on that too, we look into that, like you had mentioned. We look into the person's criminal history and background. And calls. How many calls have we been to this residence before? And we'll look at the scene. Is there chairs knocked over? Obviously, we get there. Sometimes things have been picked up, but other things that can't be fixed as quickly, like a hole in the drywall where a fist went through, or a door that's hanging off the door jamb, off the hinges. Things like that you try to pick up on, you try to observe, you try to talk to witnesses, and be very delicate with any children that might have witnessed or been present. And sometimes those children, they only know how to tell the truth. So you're going to get a very honest, innocent, picture of what took place and what transpired before you got there, despite the fact that the victim might be fearful and maybe lying because they fear, repercussions after we leave. So we take all that into consideration and account to try to do the best job we can to determine if there's any future danger to the victim or potential victim.
How much record keeping can you rely on? I mean, if you go to someone's place for the first time, is that permanently in their record as something that you can go back to?
Almost any time that anybody calls dispatch with a complaint, there's a complaint number generated for that call, and then information gets put into that complaint. Yeah, even if we go to a call and we end up determining that it was a verbal argument, and we talk and people say, yeah, usually they don't fight. Usually, it must be having a bad day if they were fighting, kind of a thing. That'll still be on record, and we can still go back and look at the notes on that complaint. And then we can also try to see, like I was saying with that history, are things progressively getting worse, and are they seeking counseling? Are they trying to get assistance and help? We want to prevent us from having to continuously respond if we can, and offer whatever resources are available to
But
them.
you don't have time for that when you're rolling up to a scene.
No, not when we're there, but that's where we rely heavily on our dispatch. I mean, a lot of times when we respond, we'll be on the radio asking questions. Is there a history here? Could you run a criminal history check on somebody? Can you do this and that? And we ask a lot of our dispatch and rely on them to be able to do the research for us, to kind of, like I said, prepare us before we get there, and then also inform us to, substantiate what we're being told as well. No, I've never been arrested before. And then we get told, yeah, he's got 2 prior arrests for domestic. Well, he or she,
But short of an arrest, even an incident report would be helpful.
Yeah, yep. And state statute, there are requirements by state statute as far as where an arrest is not made, that it's mandatory to complete a report on the incident.
I don't know, this is kind of technical, but we know the calls are recorded. We know that there's audio with interaction with the dispatch. How do you log that with the report that's taken so that it can be coalesced into something that you can access afterward?
We have a system called CIS, which all of our reports go into that system. And so if I'm going to a call where I want to see that report, I have actually on my squad computer as well, that if I'm on the scene and another deputy maybe is inside with the parties, I can go back to my computer, and if I need to, take a little time and access some of those reports to try to get better familiarize myself with that situation.
It just occurred to me you're sitting here with a video on.
Not recording.
Oh,
it's
thank you
there.
for that. Yeah, I don't need face recognition here. Just in case I want to pull something. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But that all has to be logged and to be available with an incident report as well, to understand. I mean, as a deputy, it would help me to know the demeanor of this person before I. Well, like I said, you can't access that before you get there because you're asked to be there as quickly as possible. You don't have time to be sitting in the driveway looking over video and reading logs on what's happened in the past. But on the other hand, it would be nice to know what I'm walking into here.
Yeah, and as a part of what we do, what we do is caution people if we know that there's a violent history, or if they've made threats. We can caution a person or a residence and things like that. So if there's a residence where maybe that person has made threats to law enforcement or has been known to carry weapons concealed and things like that, our dispatch can be indicated to that and let us know ahead of time that that situation we're getting into, the person's known to be violent or aggressive towards law enforcement, and have that in the back of our minds when we go to handle it. We go with an open mind, but also it's obviously beneficial to have that in the back of our mind, that we want to use a little bit of, I don't want to say extra caution, because we always want to be cautious, but also as far as our body cameras go and recording those things, it is important that we get back and we classify those videos, which is what I was saying with that incident number that's generated for every call that we get. We go back then and we put that incident number in with the video, so that when we look up that incident, we can also play the video and look back on prior calls, and review what we just went to for our reports to try to make sure that they're as accurate as can be as well. So there's a lot.
He's Aaron Anderson, Wood County Sheriff's Deputy, moving into the investigative department here at Wood County Sheriff's Department here on this final Friday in April. It occurs to me that the part of law enforcement everybody didn't like was the paperwork, and now you've got to log all of that video in at the end. I mean, how much time do you spend at the end of a shift trying to sort things out so that, because you need to access them, so you understand why it needs to be done as much as anybody.
Absolutely. And the thing is we just talked about this morning, is that when you can watch a video back and you're putting information in your report, you want to make sure that it's what was in your video, because we always consider the fact, it's going to be brought up, it's going to be questioned, and if there's discrepancies where the video can be played and your report says something different, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So it does take a lot of time to try to be accurate, and I end up finding that I have a lot more quotes in my report, because years past, you try to remember exactly what the person said, but you're not quite sure if it was word for word before you put it into those quotes. But now I can go back and actually listen to the person say it again and get it verbatim. So I end up putting a lot more quotes that helps, I think, represent the person's demeanor, mindset, and attitude at the time that they were saying it.
Well, video has also allowed you to assess the threat, or if you will, because a verbal threat, is he doing it, coming at you, or is he just being a smart aleck stepping back? I mean, when you look at that, and they'll quote that, they'll say, look, you said I was aggressive. It doesn't look aggressive to me, even though your verbiage was such, they'll be dropping F-bombs and everything else at you. So, I mean, you got to have some...
we
relax
try to
yourself a little bit to not get off on what they're antagonizing you.
Exactly. Yeah, we try to remain calm in situations like that and cool-headed, because I find that if somebody's being loud, I try to speak at an even tone and keel, and even let them know you're being loud right now. And can you just try to, I don't ever want to tell people to settle down, because I find that actually upsets people when you tell them to calm down. But it is when you try to be calm, I think that sometimes people can cool off a little bit and feed off of you and try to answer your questions better and come back down to a reasonable level.
The video, if everybody's on their haunches at the time here, this is going to go. The flame is set here under this situation. And when you look back at those kind of things, they'll use that as a defense or as whatever the case may be here. Talking with Wood County Sheriff's Department members Aaron Anderson and Scott Goldberg. You can too, 384-2191, 384-2191 here on the Insight program for today. So we'll be back with more in just a moment. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Corey Bartlett, president of Auto Value Parts Stores. For 3 generations, my family's mission has been to keep our team safe and keep our on the road. As our communities continue to deal with the effects of COVID-19, we are open to serve your essential needs. Our team is working hard to ensure that our stores are sanitized and well-stocked. Whether you're a DIYer or professional technician, since 1920, Auto Value has been there and will continue to be there for you. Thanks for your support.
Hello everyone, I'm Cindy Young with Brownfield Ag News. Every day our team brings you the most relevant and timely agricultural news. Now you can listen to the week's top stories in the wrap. Call pound 250 and give the keyword Brownfield Ag News. It's as simple as that. How is COVID-19 impacting agriculture this week? Those stories and more sent right to your phone with the wrap. Dial pound 250 and use the keyword Brownfield Ag News.
Here on the Insight program this final Friday of the month of April, talking with members of the Wood County Sheriff's Department as they make themselves available to us. And we're talking with Investigative Sergeant Scott Goldberg, Deputy Aaron Anderson, moving into the Investigative Department as well. So we have a special guest on the line here who was on his way here to be with us at the time. Wood County Sheriff Sean Becker, good morning. Wait, what happened to him here? Did he call? Did he hang up on me? Call 911. Sheriff's missing. What happened? He was there.
Maybe he was going through one of those dead zones.
That could be.
Yeah.
Is that a problem for you, or how much do you rely now on internet capability and radio, two-way? Everything used to be done on regular two-way radio.
We do run into that problem, and Aaron can probably tell you more because their computers and their squads are internet based, and so you get into certain spots over by like Cary Bluff, everybody struggles with that area, whether it be your phone and in our case our computers. So we do struggle with that, but for the most part, when I started, I don't want to age myself because I'm not that old, but cell phones were just getting going, and now we have such great access compared to what we used to. So it's only getting better and better.
There was a issue in the city about communication two-way, and whether or not when they went to the digital format the signal was strong enough. And I think the county had that problem too at one time, and they actually had some towers or additions put on. How are things as you know it now?
Our radios are good now.
Yeah, I feel like
They've really come a long ways, and it used to be if you get in a basement or something, there traditionally could be a problem or a certain part of the county, but I don't hear any of our guys complain about that anymore.
As you went from the analog to digital, the signal changed a little bit, and it wasn't quite as strong because of the fact that it was so much more clear. TV, those of you that when we changed over to digital, that was an issue too, because at least you knew on a TV that you had some snow. You were close anyway. You could move the rabbit ears around till you got closer. Now you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And you have no clue whether you should stand up, sit down, or go left or right, or where you need to be. But generally, it's with height. Like you said, a basement is a bad spot.
Yep, absolutely.
Or a metal building.
Yeah, metal buildings too.
Get in a shed, then it's hard. You got to step outside in order to get a signal.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, whatever system we're using now, which I'm not that familiar, I'm not a techie guy like that, but what we're using is working really well for us.
So at this point in time, moving forward then, do you anticipate that these measures that we're putting in now, because of pandemic, may be continued?
Well, obviously, that would be a great question for Sheriff Becker, but obviously we're following the governor's orders at this time, and I think that I think the numbers, this is my personal feelings, I think numbers are going to come down and things are going to open back up, and our new normal might be a little different, but I think I hope a year from now we look back at this and we're telling our kids 20 years from now, you wouldn't have believed what we had to go through, and this is a thing in the past, because America's been really on top of this type of stuff. And I think personally, when I seen this going on initially in China, I didn't pay attention to it like I probably should have back then, and because we don't get hit like this.
I didn't understand what it was. I kept asking, what's the deal here? If it's a virus, it's a flu, it's we were getting piecemeal reports on what this was, and I didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
We didn't know who to believe. There were different reports, like you said, coming out, and traditionally these types of pandemics don't hit America, and so I think it hit a lot of us flat-footed, as they say, and I think we can learn a lot from this too.
Well, there was emergency government training, things like that, but we did school shooters were one thing. You did the courthouse exercise. You did the things that you knew were happening. Now this might be part of your drills again, too, in the future.
Well, we always have a training every year that comes out, and we talk about bloodborne pathogens and wearing gloves and not getting poked by needles and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets tied right into that, and that we should be washing our hands more and wearing masks when we're going into unknown places.
Well, dealing
like
with
that.
sharps and touching fentanyl has been a problem for law enforcement, because you're going through something, and if you don't have gloves on, you never know what you're going to get into.
That's absolutely true.
Yep.
So which is kind of, I guess, what you might be considering an extension of that. Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming up, and congratulations on your soon-to-be movement upward, I guess you consider, doing what you want to do here with the Wood County Sheriff's Department, from deputy on up to investigative. You called him sergeant. Is that the basic rank when you get to investigations?
Yeah, once you're moved into investigations, you become an investigative sergeant. So.
Oh, pay increase?
Yeah.
There is.
A little bit. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm excited about it.
Well, we'll maybe see you down the road in the future here.
Sure,
are
I'd
you
be
guys
happy.
based out of the north office?
Yes, we're both going to be based out of that office.
Out of you call it the annex, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see them over there, or their cars over at the annex, Northwood County, over on Chestnut, I believe it is. So thank you. We'll talk to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The Insight program here on this final Friday of April on WDLB.
Your hometown radio station, AM 1450 W.